It all kicks off with an internet post celebrating that justice prevailed. The photo shows three punks totally making a mockery of the situation right after their trial. A close-up shows a nasty bug just chilling on the floor. The bully holds up a hot dog with the creepy crawler inside, joking that the meal is rich in protein. He even tries to play it off like it was just a regular prank. While they force the victim to eat it, the court's official excuse echoes in the scene, claiming you can't lock up kids with a bright future over silly jokes. The jerk grabs Yedji's head and tells her to open up, forcing the girl to swallow that gross stuff. With pure malice, the punk forces the food down her throat, all of this while the claim that the culprits were sincerely sorry completely stained the memory of what went down. The bug drops, revealing that the actual punishment for that absolute circus was just 200 ridiculous hours of community service. Completely helpless, the girl thrashes around trying to escape the cowardly attack. Cutting to the present, the victim's brother lands a heavy punch on a punching bag, absolutely disgusted by the excuse that the attackers had a big future ahead of them. He keeps throwing intense hooks, furiously questioning where his sister's future went and how that torture could ever be called a friendly prank. Blinded by anger, the guy unleashes all his frustration with a fast and brutal combo during training. Remembering that cynical post online, the MC fills with rage, questioning the group's fake remorse. With that, he pulls his right arm back, winding up for the next strike with his entire body weight. The punch explodes against the bag with a devastating impact, showing just how much fury he's bottled up. The force of the strike is so wild that the punching bag swings out of control through the air. The MC holds onto the bag's chains, trying to catch his breath after the intense workout. Devastated and drenched in sweat, he tries to convince himself that the attackers couldn't have gone that far. Night falls over the scene, showing the modest apartment building where the guy lives. Getting home, he slowly drags the front door open. In that moment, the warm memory of his sister's voice welcoming him fills his mind like a ghost. But reality hits hard. The absolute silence of the dark apartment leaves him frozen. Then, his mind drifts back to the most tragic moment of his life, when he had to say his final goodbye at the facility. The view focuses on a happy picture of the two siblings together in a frame on the dresser. Little by little, the darkness of the lonely room swallows the memories of those times that are never coming back. He thinks back to Yedji, who always went to school showing off a contagious joy on her face. But a cruel twist of fate sent the girl back completely cold and lifeless on that hospital bed. Gripping the sheets in fury, he realizes the law simply doesn't protect the victims like it should. Staring at Kim Ji-sung's photo pinned to a bulletin board, the guy concludes that the system fails miserably at punishing the real culprits. Unable to stomach the injustice anymore, he wrecks the criminal leader's picture with an iron bar. Surrounded by a full-blown investigation board in his room, the vigilante decides he's going to take matters into his own hands. Totally zeroed in on his dark mission, he mentally locks in on his first target. The memory of the scumbag who constantly bullied Yedji at school pops into his head. The trash's name is Jo Hentai, and his time to pay the tab has arrived. Now, in the present, the bully shows up tied down, all bruised up in an abandoned spot with his mouth gagged. The MC steps firmly into a puddle inside the dark hideout. Standing right in front of the hostage, he makes it crystal clear that if he doesn't get straight answers, he's gonna snap every single bone in that body. To prove he isn't bluffing, he grabs the punk's injured hand. Showing zero mercy, the vigilante snaps one of the kidnapped guy's fingers, completely ignoring the muffled screams behind the tape. Ice cold, he demands an answer and breaks another piece of the coward's hand. The bully writhes in pain as his finger structure gets totally wrecked. But the payback doesn't stop. Another dry snap echoes, while the demand for answers keeps going. Relentless, the victim's brother keeps punishing the punk's body without giving him a single second to breathe. Losing his patience with the whining, he tells the trash to just spill it already. Since the teary silence continues, another bone gets violently twisted under screams of pure despair. Super ticked off by the cowardice, the vigilant yells at him to stop crying and just give up the info. Desperate from the pain, the attacker cries buckets, trying to signal that he got the message loud and clear. As soon as the tape is ripped off, the coward gasps and asks how he was supposed to talk with a gag in his mouth. Finding his nerve hilarious, the MC fires back, reminding him that this trash used to beat up his sister over entirely made-up reasons. With that, he grabs the hostage's last intact finger, giving a final ultimatum for the confession. Completely broken, the prisoner sobs, begging for forgiveness and desperately asks for the beating to stop. Brushing off the shallow pleas, the vigilante simply snaps the bone without missing a beat. The prisoner howls in agony, repeating that he already apologized for what he did. With an empty stare, the vengeful brother asks if the crook knows the word karma. He coldly explains that all the bad stuff a person does eventually comes back to bite them in the future. Stating that the attacker should have stopped when Yedji begged, He listens to the coward pathetically cry out for his mom. Hearing that, the MC lets out a heavy sigh of disappointment and disgust. Piggybacking on the karma talk, the Vigilant admits he never really cared much for beliefs. Looking at the city skyline through a gap in the hideout, he adds that lately he started firmly believing in just one thing. His only absolute certainty now is that the underworld is real. With that, he yanks the punk by the collar back into the despair of the moment. Glaring at the human trash with deep contempt, the guy warns that the scum from that group would never find peace again. Totally consumed by payback, he declares their suffering would continue even after they crossed over. Dragging the prisoner to the edge of the unfinished building, he offers him a special chance to just end up paralyzed instead of taking a permanent dirt nap from the fall. A quick flashback shows the headlights of a luxury car cutting through the dark street. The scene cuts to Jung Rail clinging to one of the sidekicks in a mocking vibe. The rest of the punk crew is shown just casually wandering down the night sidewalk. Then, the hot-headed Shin Jo-young points his finger, picking a fight with someone on the street. The mysterious ride keeps rolling down the quiet road. The leader Kim Ji-sung dangles some car keys, showing off his total arrogance. Back at the hideout, the Vigilante holds out a phone and tells the hostage to call all his buddies to get over there right now. Seeing the kidnapped guy totally hesitating to follow the order, the MC threateningly asks if he's going to say no. Terrified by the pressure, the bully gulps and says the problem is actually something else. The memory of a tire screeching violently on the pavement highlights the tension of the reveal. The coward finally spits it out. The rest of the crew bought the farm in a massive car crash the day before. Caught completely off guard, the Vigilant is left in shock hearing that his targets are already gone. Reading the news on the phone, he finds out the three crooks crashed a stolen ride head on into a truck, checking out instantly. Absolutely stunned, the Vigilant wonders if that whole group really kicked the bucket all at once. Frozen, he lets the device slip from his hand, feeling the rug pulled out from under him by the sudden news. The thud of the phone hitting the floor breaks the heavy silence of the dark room. Staring at his own shaking hands, he's left totally lost on what to do about his sister's payback, since the targets are already out of the picture. Tears of pure frustration start rolling down his face as the reality of the situation sinks in. Grabbing his head in despair, the guy cries tears of rage, feeling like the whole thing is unbelievably unfair. Then, his distorted reflection in the puddle shows exactly how rock bottom his mind is right now. Breaking the heavy mood, the MC gets the attention of the tied-up coward, who stutters back in pure panic. Completely unhinged, Yedji's brother asks if those pieces of trash ended up down below, leaving the hostage super confused by the weird vibe. He keeps pushing the idea, claiming that people who drive someone to the edge would definitely roast in the fiery pits. Realizing the dude has totally lost his marbles, the attacker desperately decides to just agree to buy some time. But things spiral out of control when the Vigilante grabs his face, figuring that taking someone out would be a one-way VIP ticket down there too. Panic takes over the crook's beat, up-face as he realizes the absolute madness of that fatal logic. Ignoring the desperate begging, the furious silhouette attacks without mercy to wrap up his dark plan. The coward's lifeless body hits the dark floor, marking the end of the line for that bully. Now, on top of an abandoned building, the Vigilante looks down at the city, ready to take the plunge. Standing right on the edge of the structure, he ironically concludes that the big boss upstairs really must exist. Letting himself fall backward, the guy says one last prayer asking for a direct, non-stop flight to the underworld. As he free falls through the cold night air, the only thing on his mind is wanting to track down his targets on the other side. He plans on serving up his own brand of justice against the scumbags who ruined his family. Suddenly, the absolute void is shattered by a creepy presence telling him to get up. The kid slowly opens his eyes, still dizzy, and trying to figure out what happened after the drop. Confused, he pushes himself up to his knees, checking out this totally bizarre and unknown place. A massive, scary figure appears sitting on a giant throne, dropping a crushing vibe over the new arrival. Totally intimidated by the creature's sheer size, the guy stammers, wanting to know who the heck he's looking at. The shady entity looks him up and down with glowing eyes in the pitch black. With a piercing, beastly glare, the big monster tells him to cheer up, because his wish is about to come true. Introducing himself properly, the giant reveals he's the big boss known by a bunch of names, including Yama or Enma. But he prefers the more common title among mortals, calling himself the Great King Yomra. Hearing that heavy-hitting name, the Vigilante's jaw drops as he processes the crazy info. Reality hits like a truck, and a wave of shock gets plastered across the guy's face. Full of a sadistic kind of hope, he stammers, asking if this place is actually what he was looking for. The big boss's deep, monstrous voice confirms the kid's hunch without blinking. Throwing his arms wide in an epic gesture, the king welcomes him to the underworld and addresses the guy as the lately sung Yul. Gritting his teeth, can barely hold back a mix of wild hype and tears. He admits to himself that he totally misjudged the Bullies' leader this whole time. Thinking back to the punk's mocking post about justice, he ironically agrees with their message. With a look of pure insanity, Yedji's brother declares that true justice is definitely real, and he's about to collect the debt right there. Cutting off the hype train, the giant ruler corrects the terminology, explaining that technically, this is the netherworld. The entity finds the whole thing amusing, praising the kid's unbelievable guts for checking out early just to go hunting his enemies. Skipping the small talk, the vigilant focuses on what matters and demands to know where his target is. Fueled by all that bottled-up rage, he presses the king to drop the exact location of those pieces of trash. The big guy lets out a mocking laugh, really digging the rookie's impatience and aggressive energy. In response, the big boss points out the target's location, just as one of the scumbags pops up looking completely lost in a gloomy spot right nearby. Without wasting a single second, the MC appears right behind the cowardly attacker, calling out his name with ice in his voice. Catching the human trash totally off guard, he lands a super heavy punch right to the face, mocking their speedy reunion. The hit knocks the crook down, who tries to call a timeout while getting absolutely hammered with more punches. Straddling the scumbag, the vigilant unloads all his rage, throwing a party over their underworld meetup, while the victim begs for mercy. Watching the brawl from afar, King Yeomer calmly calls over one of his underlings. Blinded by pure hatred, the kid wins his arm back, gearing up for a devastating finishing move to close out the job. But before the fist can even connect with the target's face, a super fast and precise slice chops off the vigilante's right arm in the blink of an eye. Totally frozen by the crazy scene, he just stares at his own stump of a shoulder, not understanding a single thing. A badass demoness armed with a halberd shows up in front of him, warning him not to pull any reckless stunts in there. With a strict stance, the guard points out that he's disrespecting the presence of the sacred throne. Keeping her weapon aimed like a threat, she lets him know that any more drama will result in some serious punishment. The underling makes it crystal clear she won't put up with any more nonsense and glares at the kid with glowing eyes. Only then does his brain process the damage, and the guy's face scrunches up as the shock of the amputation hits him. An ear-piercing scream of agony bounces around the hall as the newly departed feels the brutal loss of his limb. Cursing through the pain, he starts panicking, asking what the heck just went down, while the wound starts glowing in a super weird way. Grabbing the injured kid's attention, the big boss on the throne repeats the late guy's name with total authority. The big monster orders the rookie to pay close attention to the next words, since they're going to decide his fate. Setting the record straight, the ruler mentions that even though he kinda likes the kid, he's still a sinner who ended a life. The MC frowns, trying to figure out where this whole philosophical chat is headed. Holding up a massive finger, the king admits he's way too busy to be granting wishes for doomed souls. But then he tosses out a deal, offering to wipe the kid's slate clean if he agrees to work as a reaper down in the underworld. Staring the target down, the entity lays the first option on the table, give up on everything and roast down below forever. Turning up the heat, he presents the alternative and tells the young guy to choose right now, if he wants to become a minion in exchange for his revenge. Meanwhile, the glowing energy on the kid's shoulder literally spawns a brand new arm to replace the chopped off one. Testing out the fresh limb, the vigilante grumbles that the offer would be way sweeter if they hadn't sliced his arm off for nothing. Clueless as to how the healing happened so fast, he stares at his fully restored, scar-free hand. The guard's explanation comes right after, reminding him that everybody down there is made of pure soul stuff in the spiritual realm. She spells it out: any injury that would end someone in the world of the living heals up in a few seconds in the netherworld. Realizing that you still feel all the pain even if you heal fast, a crazy glimmer of pure evil lights up the kid's eyes. Spotting the ultimate loophole, he drops a dark smile, figuring out he can torture the crooks forever, wrecking their bodies over and over without ever actually taking them out for good. Looking at his newly healed hand, the MC gets that he can keep this violent cycle on a permanent loop. With that, he asks if the deal basically means he gets to keep making those pieces of trash suffer. Rocking a dark smirk, the vigilante decides he's got zero reasons to pass up the offer. Noticing the hype, King Yomer says he now needs to test the kid's soul-catching skills. Pointing at the coward right below, the big boss suggests the test should be taking down that very same crook. Terrified by the idea, the bully Joe Hyunty objects, saying he already got offed by that maniac. But the ruler claps back, reminding him that suffering in the fiery pits would be way worse, and questions why the kid is so scared. Tossing out a juicy bait, the entity offers to cancel the human trash's punishment if he actually wins the fight. He explains that souls who racked up a ton of bad karma on Earth become ridiculously stronger in the underworld. Buying into the promise, the punk swallows his fear and demands the big boss keep his word if he comes out on top. With that, the two enemies square up in the grand hall to settle the score. The vengeful brother keeps his cool, totally locked on the target. Meanwhile, the crook tries to convince himself he just needs to catch a quick win and bounce out of there ASAP. But a killer death glare from Lee Sung Yul proves this is not going to be a walk in the park. Wasting no time, the attacker grinds his teeth, gearing up to just charge in. Ticked off by his opponent's stare, the bully rushes in, throwing a straight punch and telling him to stop looking at him. The MC effortlessly dodges the cheap shot just by tilting his body to the side. Taking advantage of the perfect opening, he lands a nasty uppercut right on the crook's jaw. Mocking the earlier complaint, the vigilant sarcastically asks if he should look at the trash with tender, loving care instead. He puts a tight grip on the dazed attacker's arm. In one swift move, he snaps the scumbag's limb with zero pity, completely ignoring the halls of agony. The prisoner totally panics, having flashbacks to the torture he went through before. Suddenly, the punk's body starts acting super weird, while he whines about being treated like a chew toy. Telling his rival to cut it out, the human trash gears up to fight back. Totally confused, the vigilant realizes the texture of the arm he's holding has completely changed. The crook's arm straight up turns into liquid, slipping away and freeing the prisoner. Joe Hyenta curses out his opponent with all the hate he's got. Right after, he unleashes a brutal water attack on the floor, tearing up the room. The vigilant quickly slides back across the floor to dodge the surprise hit through the smoke. Zooming in, the bully's morphed arm bubbles up, showing off the weird new nature of that body. Checking out his own freakish upgrade, the coward has no clue where it came from. The big guy on the throne clears things up. The mutation is just the direct result of his karma power. Laying out the rules, the deity mentions these skills pop up from intense desires or deep grudges from their past life. Finding it funny, the king figures the liquid form showed up because the trash absolutely hated getting his joints shattered. The attacker realizes how heavy this new skill is and gulps, totally blown away. Celebrating the new trick with an evil smirk, he thinks the whole thing is just awesome. Meanwhile, the dust settles, revealing Lee Sung Yul standing there without a single scratch. Full of himself, the crook taunts him, asking how his rival plans to fight now that physical punches are basically useless. Clenching his fist, the punk notes that besides the water trick, his physical strength went through the roof too. Oozing pure evil, he complains that he didn't torment Yedji even more to rack up enough power to completely crush the vigilant. Hearing that messed up comment, the victim's brother calls the guy pathetic for acting so tough over a cheap little power. The roast catches the attacker off guard, totally wrecking his arrogant vibe. Completely consumed by a terrifying aura, the kid dares the fat pig to bring it on if he's so confident. Blindwidge over the taunt, the trash preps another attack, promising to beat his opponent to a pulp. With that, he fires a massive blast of water right at the vigilante to finish the fight. Shocking everybody, the MC blocks the lethal hit using just his bare arm, not taking a single scratch. Mind blown by the insane defense, the punk can't comprehend how that block even worked. But he quickly tries to chill out, convinced his evil karma reserves are still way bigger. Reading the human trash's super obvious face, the vigilante points out his dumb expression gives everything away and demands to speak. With a piercing stare, he asks why a doomed criminal like him would be weaker than some street-level punk. The crushing mental pressure makes the attacker take a step back in pure panic. Trying to shake off the terror, the crook clicks his tongue and summons his max power through his hands. Desperate, he whips out dozens of liquid lashes all at once, daring the kid to dodge that rain of hits. With super chill and precise moves, the vigilant dodges all the deadly attacks like it's a game. Laser-focused, he tracks every drop of water in the air before a single strike can touch him. The kid confesses that losing his sister left a hole in his chest that just can't be fixed. The memory of the trio's mocking photo, showing zero regrets, makes his rage boil over. Feeling his heart burn with absolute hate, a colorful, fiery energy starts wrapping around the guy's clenched fist. Pushing through the enemy's last blasts without breaking a sweat, he closes the gap in a flash. With a face fully taken over by pure hate, he pulls back his glowing arm, swearing he only wants one thing. The blazing aura powers up around his fist, mixing his thirst for payback into one brutal force. With a violent crack, the strike tears through the air and sinks mercilessly into the human trash's chest. The impact is so insanely heavy it warps the attacker's body on the spot. The show from afar, the king and his guard are totally blown away by the power display. The prisoner's veins pop out of his face as he suffers an unbearable agony from the inside out. The vigilante keeps his fist planted, declaring that the worm is going to feel the exact same pain he had to deal with. Spiritual flames swallow the cowardly soul, burning his pathetic existence down to nothing but floating ash. Silence takes over the gloomy hall again as the winner stares at the empty space, where his enemy used to be. Curious about the aftermath, the guy checks out the smoke coming off his perfectly fine hands. Looking deep into that energy, he wonders if that crazy fire is his own karma showing up. His mind flashes back to an old conversation where he heard that the absolute worst way to go out is getting roasted alive. The flashback zooms in on the speaker clenching his fists while describing human skin slowly frying. The story explained that as the moisture evaporates, your internal organs shrink up in total torment. A nightmare fuel vision of a charred body up in flames illustrates the whole terrifying story. It all wraps up with the hardcore fact that going out by fire tops any other pain you could feel in the world. Looking at his own flaming fist, Lee Sung-yeol celebrates the chance to dish out that exact same level of devastating agony on his enemy. Totally swept up in the craziness of revenge, he declares he's going to put the torture on repeat as long as those scumbags' bodies keep healing. Hyped about his new toy, he gets ready to use that blazing karma power to his advantage. Right then, the sound of clapping echoes through the giant hall, cutting the tension. Stoked by the brutal show, the Big King praises the hardcore performance he just witnessed. Keeping the good vibes rolling, the boss admits he didn't expect to see the kid unleashing those flames so intensely right off the bat. Hearing that weird term, the Vigilante asks what exactly the ruler is talking about. Trying to connect the dots, he asks if the big monster is talking about the energy he just used to dust the crook. But the king shakes his head no, patiently explaining that the kid wasn't actually using his true karma power right there. Breaking down what that energy is, the giant reveals the fire is just the basic juice that makes up the souls of all the dead folks down there. He adds that any departed soul with enough willpower can whip up those flames to attack their enemies without breaking much of a sweat. On top of attacking, the ghost fire also works on autopilot to heal and patch up the soul anytime it takes some direct damage. As a final rule, the entity points out that the heat of these flames skyrockets based on the amount of sins a person racked up while they were breathing. Sizing up the rookie, the big boss notes that the amount of fire he was throwing around was way off the charts. Curious about the news, the MC wants to know what his real special power born from his grudges would be then. The ruler admits he has absolutely no clue, but promises the kid will find out the second he runs into his targets. The mental image of those wretched crooks pops back into Lee Sung-yeol's head, reigniting his hate. Giving a dry nod, the Vigilant says he doesn't give a crap about figuring out his special power anyway. The only thing he actually cares about is making those trashes roast and suffer as much as humanly possible. With a sadistic, laser-focused glare, the guy declares he doesn't care at all about what methods he has to use to get the job done. Suddenly, a metallic clank echoes through the hall, grabbing the Vigilante's attention from behind. Caught completely off guard, his eyes go wide as he feels a crushing presence sneaking up quietly. Before he can even twitch, a monstrous hand shoots out of the shadows and lunges right at the kid. Totally overpowered by the insane strength, he curses, trying to figure out what kind of crazy nonsense is happening now. The beast clamps a glowing chain around his neck, pinning the new soul down without even trying. Forced down by the creature's weight, the MC drops to his knees, totally unable to break the brute force hold. Assessing the weird situation, the Vigilant realizes he didn't sense even a drop of that monster's energy before getting ambushed. Having no clue where it came from, he stares down the colossal creature, trying to figure out what the heck this giant beast is. Totally chill about the chaos, King Yomer introduces the beast as a soldier of the Yaksha squad, the ultimate security guards of the underworld. After the rundown, the kid just stares at the entity in silence, waiting for them to take the chain off his neck. Killing the mood, the MC demands they stop stalling since he passed the test and wants to know where the rest of the crooks are. Getting straight to the point, the big boss says he was planning to hand over the info the second the guy stepped into the hall. But the deity drops a major buzzkill, admitting he doesn't have the slightest idea where the target's souls ended up. The news catches Lee Sung-yeol totally off guard, leaving the kid completely lost over the mixed signals. Breaking down the underworld's daily grind, the king explains the Reapers are the ones in charge of rounding up the freshly departed souls for judgment. But since there isn't a single Reaper left on the payroll, tracking down where lost spirits wander off became impossible. Annoyed by the afterlife's red tape, the kid grits his teeth, wanting to know where all the Reapers supposed to do the job vanished to. Dropping the bomb with a dead serious tone, His Giant Majesty reveals the entire squad was completely wiped out. A flashback to a massive bloody rebellion under a blood-red moon shows the carnage where a huge chunk of the guards lost their lives fighting. During that wild chaos, the Soul Collection Division ended up being the main target and got totally wiped off the map. Because of that, rebuilding the squad became the ultimate priority to keep the reincarnation cycle running, which is why he offered the rookie the jig. Noticing the kid's dumbfounded look, the big monster holds back a laugh, telling him not to get too bummed out about the lack of info. To ease the tension, The king promises that even though they don't know the exact spot right now, they do have the coordinates of where the trash landed first. He explains that a departed soul's drop zone is decided straight up by how heavy their sins are, tossing the worst offenders into the most dangerous areas. Since the targets took lives and built up some nasty karma, the boss easily figures out which chaotic zone they were tossed into right off the bat. With the destination locked in, the deity declares the killers dropped straight into the brutal Hyuksei mountain. The rest of the crew feels the horror of that hellish spot right after kicking the bucket in the crash. The criminal leader wakes up super dizzy on the rocky ground, while creepy storms go off in the underworld sky. Totally lost, his eyes go wide as he stares at the ruined landscape around him, having no idea how he got there. Back in the main hall, King Yeomer gets up from his giant throne, ordering the kid to tag along to see something important. The heavy thud of the massive doors echoes, opening the way to the grand spiritual palace's balcony. As soon as the outside view hits the MC's face, he's totally blown away by the sheer size of the scenery. A whole city stretches all the way to the horizon, mixing ancient buildings floating in a sky torn up by dimensional rifts. Beaming with pride, the entity announces that this is the real, peaceful face of the underworld for souls taking a breather. Stunned by how normal the place looks, the kid mutters, wondering how a whole town full of residents exists in the afterlife. The ruler sighs that the current population is tiny compared to the old days, since thousands of innocent souls got dusted during the rebellion massacre. Talking about the whole afterlife flow, he points out that the spiritual plane tosses the heavy sinners straight into the hellfire. On the flip side, the system also hooks good folks up with shelter and a well-deserved break to chill until it's time to reincarnate. Giving him an intense look, the big monster gives him full green light to torture his targets however he wants once he catches them. But he makes a point to drop a threatening reminder that the top priority is still actually doing his contracted job. The deity wraps it up, saying his official mission is to safely escort all the lost souls back to the spirit city. Looking super calm, the rookie agrees to the terms without making a fuss about the side quest. With absolute confidence, the vigilant says he's cool with being used as a pawn as long as he gets to put his hands on those scumbags. Happy with the new guy's obedience and bloodlust, the Great King flashes a super satisfied smile. Right then, the boss officially dubs him an interim reaper to handle the spirit hauling from that day forward. Cause the kid's in such a rush, he summons his magic fire, deciding to just hand over the work uniform without any long, boring ceremony. Instantly, a wave of heat wraps around Lee Sung Yeol's body, letting the energy spawn new clothes on him in the blink of an eye. The fire tornado eats up his old threads while the smoke clears, showing off the brand new combat gear. Geared up in the classic dark uniform, the new employee checks out his look and how perfectly the equipment fits. Leaning on the throne, the big guy laughs at the rookie's surprised face, like that magic wardrobe change was the most basic trick in the book. Satisfied with how it turned out, the big boss praises the kid's stance, claiming he's already got the vibe of a lethal reaper. Not caring about fashion compliments, the vigilante stays locked on the goal and asks for the exact route to this Hyuksei mountain. The path clears up when the entity tells the worker to just hit the main trail straight north without taking any detours. He adds that the jade earrings he handed over work like walkie-talkies to call for backup whenever things get messy. With his goal locked in, the newly promoted Reaper takes his first step north, ready to wreck anybody who crosses his path. Marching straight down that gloomy path, the new Reaper is dead set that he'll run into the crooks again real soon. With his cloak flapping in the wind, he walks firmly through the rocky mountain. Not wasting a sec, the kid jumps off a cliff to catch a shortcut. His landing is so heavy it actually cracks the stone floor around his boots. A massive dust cloud blows up into the air as he touches down in the new zone. Jumping towards the drop, he tells those worms to hold on just a little bit longer. Free, falling toward a creepy red zone, the MC swears he's gonna make all of them regret everything they ever did. Totally eaten up by rage, the vigilante's face proves he's not gonna show a single ounce of mercy. The epic view of Hyuksei Mountain reveals giant cliffs tied together by massive chains under a warped sky. Far from there, Kim Jisung wakes up spooked and shakes his buddy Shin Ji-young, telling him to get up fast. Completely shell-shocked, the crook panics, trying to wrap his head around the situation. Stuttering, he warns about the car heading their way, but Jung Rail snaps back that the ride is the least of their worries right now. Standing on the edge of the cliff, Shin Ju-young agrees with the girl and asks what his partner is even talking about. Staring down into the endless abyss full of chains, he lets out a heavy sigh and starts getting the bizarre reality. Looking right at the underworld's messed-up landscape, the punk finally announces that they're all dead. Trying to use logic, Kim Ji-sung recaps what went down, remembering they all blacked out right before the car crash and woke up in this weird spot. With zero patience, Jung Rail screams and calls him an idiot, annoyed that he keeps repeating the obvious. Exhausted by the mess, the girl sits on the ground, hugging her legs and grumbling. Shin Ju-young digs through his shirt pockets, way more worried about losing his smokes than his own afterlife. Getting teary, the girl starts calling for her mom in the middle of that deserted mountain. Ticked off by the crying, the punk walks over to her and mocks the fact she's begging for her family now. Keeping his cool, the guy suggests they search the area to see if there's any way to bounce back to life. Super stressed, the girl blows up, screaming that the whole thing is the fault of the idiot who drove like a total maniac. Caught off guard by the aggressive blame, he lets out a confused mumble. With her nerves totally fried, the girl demands he take the heat for stealing the car in the first place. He doesn't back down and throws it right back, pointing out she helped with the heist, making it crystal clear he didn't pull the job solo. Kim Ji-sung butts into the argument, telling the girl to admit she should have been the one driving. Looking extra shatty, Shin Ji-young accuses his partner of never doing anything on his own and just whining 24/7. Feeling the vibe get heavy, the leader tries to chill everyone out, reminding them they're all friends here. The punk's eyes spark with hate as he asks if his buddy has no pride, since the girl is always pinning the blame on them. Wrapping up his point, Shin Ju-young points out the girl never lifts a finger to solve her own messes. Stuttering and sweating bullets, Kim Ji-sung ends up agreeing with his partner, but tries to make excuses for her attitude. Watching his friend's reaction, the punk locks eyes with a creepy kind of calm. An evil smirk creeps onto his face as he mockingly asks if his buddy is actually into the girl. Hearing that total nonsense, Jung Rail's eyes bug out, totally offended by the wild claim. Super defensive, the leader stutters, asking what crazy talk his partner is spitting. With a total psycho stare, Shin Ju-young tells him to wake up, demanding 100% focus so they can break out of this hellhole. Not taking the disrespect, the partner throws a straight punch right at the loudmouth's face. Taking the hit, the punk's head snaps to the side, and he lets out a quiet grunt from the strike. Acting all tough, Kim Ji-sung warns his buddy to keep his mouth shut about stuff he doesn't know. But the payback comes in a flash, with the guy who got hit returning a brutal haymaker through the air. The hit is so devastating it sends the attacker flying hard right into the mountain rocks. Staring at his own glowing fist, Shin Ju-young is totally clueless about where he got that insane strength from. Blowing on his hand, he cynically asks if his buddy is feeling okay after taking that hit. Wrecked in the rubble, Kim Ji-sung howls in agony with his face completely covered in bright spirit flames. By some miracle, the fire vanishes and the injured guy's face heals up fast without a single scar. Touching his perfectly fine cheek, Kim Ji-sung can't grasp how he got fixed up so fast. Watching the whole thing up close, Shin Ju-young analyzes the situation in dead silence. Impressed, he cracks an arrogant smile, figuring out it's impossible to get seriously hurt around there. Still lying in the rocks, his partner curses, overflowing with rage over the cheap shot. Ignoring the trash talk, the coward tells his buddy to stop making a scene and start following his orders from now on. Not even processing the nerve, Kim Ji-sung lets out a confused mumble, staring at something higher up. While the arrogant jerk demands an answer right now, his buddy stammers, pointing out the huge danger standing right behind him. A massive beast looking like a savage werewolf steps out of the shadows with its jaws wide open. Thinking he's basically untouchable, the punk just smirks, wanting to know what the new problem is. In the blink of an eye, the monster attacks mercilessly, triggering an explosive impact on the stone floor. Caught between the beast's razor teeth, Shin Ju-young gets brutally crushed, getting the wind knocked out of him. Blood sprays everywhere while the crook screams in pure agony, getting chewed up alive. Fighting desperately against the fangs, he curses at the creature, trying to power through the mind-numbing pain. Blind with hate, the guy grabs the beast's snout, swearing he knows how to bite back. Using sheer brute strength, the punk violently rips the monster's mouth open, making the beast growl. Without a second thought, he swallows a chunk of meat ripped straight off the creature. Instantly, a dark vibe takes over the kid, making his eyes glow a super unnatural color. Covered in blood, Shin Ju-young wipes his mouth, complaining that the beast tastes like absolute garbage. Staring the giant animal down the guy declares that the monster is the one who's going down now. Furious over the comeback, the savage beast lets out a deafening roar and charges again. Loading up all the weight of that new cursed energy, the criminal pulls his fist back, prepping a fatal blow. The punch connects with the creature's jaw with monstrous power, shattering bone in a blood explosion. Away from the mess, Jung Rail huddles up scared behind a rock, watching the whole slaughter play out. She lets out a terrified scream as she feels the shockwave wrecking everything around her. A heavy body slams violently into the ground right in front of her hiding spot. Absolutely petrified by the brutal scene, the girl shakes with fear, feeling the end breathing down her neck. Shin Ju-young taps her shoulder, but she backs off, stuttering about how totally messed up his face looks. Clueless about the girl's freak out, the killer asks what's wrong with him, showing half his face twisted into a pure demonic look. Far from there, the vigilant Lee Sung-yeol stops in his tracks, noticing a massive pillar of dark energy blowing up on the horizon. The giant monster blows smoke out its nose, trying to catch its breath after taking that last big hit. Super ticked off, the beast gets into an aggressive stance, proving this fight is far from over. Not showing an ounce of fear, the crook Shin Jeong cracks his knuckles, egging the beast on for a straight-up brawl. Blind with rage, the massive beast charges full speed, launching a lethal strike to rip its opponent apart. With insane reflexes, the punk stops the rush dead in its tracks by grabbing the animal's jaws head-on. Feeling the crushing weight of the tackle, he grunts from the effort, while blocking the animal's raw power. Blue spirit energy violently flares up from the kid's fist, catching the beast totally off guard. Totally swallowed by the dark aura, the attacker calls out his opponent's doom without a second thought. Flexing all that new corrupted power, he slams the werewolf's body against the rocky floor like it's nothing. The hit is so brutal it kicks up a rain of rocks and completely shatters the ground nearby. Safely away from the danger zone, Jung Rail watches the power explosion, totally frozen in shock. The destruction spreads across the zone, ripping up the dirt and spawning chunks of spirit ice everywhere. In another dark corner of the underworld, dozens of freshly departed souls free fall through the abyss screaming in total panic. When he violently hits rock bottom, one of the newbies groans in pain, trying to figure out what just happened. In the unknown dark, he tenses up, hearing a super weird crunching noise right next to him. The creepy scene reveals the punk chewing on a piece of raw meat like an absolute savage. The dropped soul spots the silhouette in the dark and asks if that's the leader of their old gang. The heavy silence and chewing noises make the guy sweat bullets, getting a bad feeling that things are going sideways fast. Staring at the rookie with a face smeared in blood and magic energy, Shin Jeong holds the beast's leftovers and sadistically asks if his buddy wants a taste too. Totally out of his mind, the killer confesses that for some crazy reason, he feels a massive power spike with every single bite. Cutting back to the vigilant Lee Sung-yeol breaks into a dead sprint, crossing the underworld's red territory. Using an explosive move to cut corners, he jumps with so much force that the ground cracks under his boots. 100% zoned in on the hunt, the new Reaper takes a deep breath, trying to keep his payback anxiety in check. Rolling into a creepy valley, the MC runs into a massive mountain range built entirely out of leftover bones. Looking at that terrifying setup, he realizes he finally hit the famous forest and the targets are super close. The guy's mind drifts back, remembering the Big King's serious warning about the threats lurking on the path. The big guy warned him that from there on out, the kid would run into starving gulls hunting for dead folks. Pushing through the stone trails without backing down, he moves forward, totally ignoring the promised danger. Just a few yards away, three shady-looking thugs laugh maliciously while cornering a victim. Trapped with nowhere to run, a shaking girl begs the creeps to stop being cowards. Without a drop of pity, the human trash tells the girl to shut her mouth and stay put. The girl lets out a high-pitched panic scream when the coward tries to forcefully grab her arm. Noticing the screaming, Lee Sung-yeol stops walking and zeroes in on the cowardly mess happening just up ahead. Annoyed by the unwanted company, the gang leader holds the victim and demands to know who the heck the nosy guy is. The MC's cold stare shows absolute emptiness, proving his patience for scumbags is sitting at zero. In a split-second rage spike, the guy projects the faces of the trashes who hurt his sister onto these cheap thugs. Full of cheap attitude, one of the thugs points a finger, trying to bully the newcomer with insults. Skipping all the small talk, the vigilant crosses the space in a blink and buries a devastating punch into the loudmouth's face. The hit is so hardcore it sends the attacker flying through the air in an explosion of pain and impact. Freaking out over their buddy's sudden flight, the other two thugs go into shock, calling out for their boss. With a pinpoint strike, the Reaper crushes the wrist of the punk holding the young girl hostage. The girl stares at her savior, surprised and washed over by an instant wave of safety and gratitude. She shrinks back shyly and starts thanking the guy from the bottom of her heart for stepping in. But the hero shatters the friendly vibe instantly, coldly letting her know she's in the way and telling her to get lost. Without giving her a single chance to reply, he wraps the girl in red spirit bands and launches her away from the brawl. While she's getting tossed through the air without warning, the victim screams, thinking the fall is going to be curtains for her. But the Reaper's magic energy acts like a perfect airbag, landing the girl safely in a spot far away. Absolutely furious at the disrespect, the blonde goon curses the intruder and charges in to defend the crew's honor. With an almost annoying level of chill, the vigilante simply dodges the angry punch by slightly turning his body. Not letting the opening slide, he lands a clean, solid hit right into the enemy's gut. Showing some crazy control over his magic clothes, the guy spawns glowing whips straight out of his sleeves. Using this quick trap, he wraps up the thug's body and casually yanks him up into the air without breaking a sweat. With a ruthless crack, the newly minted Reaper whips the band downwards with brutal force. The crook drops like a rock against the stone, howling in agony as his bones eat the impact. Without making a big deal out of it, Yedji's brother starts dragging the defeated trash across the dusty floor. Watching his team get totally humiliated, the first leader finally manages to get up after the initial steamrolling. Despair takes over the thug's face as he realizes they messed with the most lethal dude on the block. Closing the gap like a deadly lightning bolt, the MC ditches the knocked out goon and rockets toward the last opponent. The insane boost comes from a destructive stump that literally makes the rocks shake. The punishing combo wraps up with an upward kick that launches the coward straight by the chin. To fully lock down the situation, the Reaper chokes out the leader and slams his body into the dirt. Keeping a bureaucratic but threatening tone, he formally introduces himself as the king's underling and suggests a peaceful surrender to save him from any more pain. Choking under the iron grip, the scumbag tries to stall, asking to talk it out and yelling confessions that it's all his fault. Hidden behind his back, the thug's hand quietly spawns a dagger made of pure spirit light. Trying to sell the look of a weak, sorry loser, the punk fakes a nervous face to make the hunter drop his guard. But the pathetic disguise crumbles instantly when he sinks the energy blade right into the vigilante's chest, demanding to be let go. The human trash's face oozes pure adrenaline as he bets it all on this sneaky sneak attack working out. The dirty trick actually lands, and the coward gets totally hyped, confirming the steel actually cut his enemy. Forced to take a step back with his hand pressing on his injured chest, the kid grunts, admitting the hit actually hurt. Thinking he totally flipped the script, the attacker laughs at the situation, guessing the pain must feel familiar since the Reaper probably checked out the exact same way on Earth. Flexing the little glowing knife, the loudmouth brags about his awesome skill to just spawn weapons whenever he feels like it. Cold and totally unbothered by the nasty cut, the Vigilant watches his own flames patch his body up and casually mentions he now knows what getting stabbed feels like. Treating the lethal hit like hands-on training, he darkly notes that the lesson was great. With a bizarre kind of chill, he tells the panicking thug that from now on, he can handle that level of pain with zero issues. Going full sadist, the Vigilant has a blast with the plot twist, guaranteeing the real slaughter is just getting started. The thug leader completely loses his mind, screaming and asking his goons what they're so scared of. Trying to make excuses for the embarrassing show, one of the thugs argues the boss only took that hit because he let his guard down. Not wasting a single second, the crooks rush in, going all out and stomping hard on the rock. A believing teamwork makes the dream work. They jump the kids back altogether, thinking they can wrap up the fight in a flash. But the new Reaper drops an overwhelming burst of red spirit energy that violently blasts the trio into the wall. Cold as ice, the MC puts a tight grip on the leader's armed hand and notices the coward is starting to flinch. With a dark tone, he admits that deep down, he was kinda hoping things would end up exactly like this. Wrapping his own fist in a flaming aura, the kid gears up to pay back the lethal hit with some heavy interest attached. Suddenly, a massive pillar of magic energy explodes on the horizon, tearing through the hellish mountain sky. The impact force is so massive it kicks up a thick dust cloud, completely blacking out the vision in the area. Lying on the floor totally wrecked, one of the goons groans in pain, trying to shake off the beating he just took. Meanwhile, the Vigilant casually strolls toward the losers while adjusting his arm bandages. Standing right in front of the wreck squad, he threateningly asks if the punks still want to keep playing around. Totally broken by fear, the three thugs end up tied down and sitting on the floor with zero chance of making a run for it. Looking at his handiwork, the kid lets out a frustrated sigh, wondering if he really has to drag all of them along the trail. Trying to skip the red tape, he lets the big king know he's not planning on hiking all the way back to the palace just to drop off these locked-up souls. His Majesty easily agrees to send another unit for the pickup, but stops mid-sentence when he notices something off. Heavy, monstrous footsteps start echoing through the zone, shaking the rocks and shattering the silence. Terrified by the heavy vibrations, the gang leader stammers, asking if a certain creepy beast ended up wandering over here. Totally lost on why they're suddenly freaking out, the hero asks what monster the coward is talking about. Deep darkness swallows up a narrow pass between the giant bone pillars right in front of them. Out of the pitch black, a bizarre smile full of razor-sharp teeth reveals itself in a super unsettling way. Panic completely takes over the prisoners, who start screaming non-stop that the legendary mountain beast finally showed up. A pale, messed-up hand with giant claws steps into the light, proving the crew's worst nightmare is 100% real. Over the comms, the ruler drops a serious tone, realizing the kid just bumped straight into a terrifying gull. The deity tells the rookie to be extremely careful around that cursed freak. The gross beast stands tall in the shadows, while the king drops a warning: getting eaten by evil spirits straight up cancels your eternal healing buff. Taking in the weight of that deadly rule, the MC locks his eyes and figures that thing definitely isn't on the endangered species list. Hyped about the rare chance to go all out without holding back, he cracks a smile of pure excitement. Slipping into his aggressive combat stance, the Vigilant declares that beating the crap out of these freaks is going to do the spirit world a huge solid. With eyes crazy on adrenaline, he celebrates that this nasty beast is going to make the perfect punching bag for a warm-up. Totally flipping the script, the monster completely ignores the hunter and blitzes past him at insane speed. The girl who just got rescued bugs her eyes out and drops a terrified scream as she sees the lethal threat coming right for her. The ghoul throws its creepy jaws wide open right in front of the girl, ready to slice the hostage in a single bite. A millisecond before disaster, the Reaper lands a brutal kick dead center on the giant beast's face. Holding the girl tight, the hero slides hard across the dusty ground, pulling her away from the strike zone. Annoyed by the attacker's nerve, he shoots the beast a death glare, silently accepting the whole bodyguard mission. Tucking the victim behind him to keep her safe, the Vigilant points out that every single one of those souls needs to face judgment. Mad as hell about losing such an easy snack, the freak smashes the stone floor with pure hate and savagery. Switching tactics in a flash, the beast lunges again, totally blowing past the MC and heading straight for the pile of tied-up targets. With absolute brutality, the creature grabs one of the tied-up thugs and lifts the dude, getting ready to bite his head clean off. Mind blown by the weird behavior, the kid can't believe this spiky trash piece is going for literally everyone there except him. The ghoul keeps the prisoner pinned, while the hero watches the circus from afar, trying to read the enemy's game plan. That's when reality hits hard, and the creature's sadistic smile proves the big monster is actually smart. The memory of the lesson hits him. The beast might act like a wild animal, but it's far from stupid. The monster proves it's super cunning and knows exactly how to zero in on the most helpless, easiest meal around first. Stuck without a way to run, the thug sweats cold and freezes in terror as he watches the gross hand reaching for him. Not letting the party keep going, the Vigilant dashes in, using his own energy, packed fist to stop the slaughter. The flaming punch hits the ghoul's chest dead on, sparking an air explosion that rocks the mountain's entire bone setup. Even after getting dragged across the rocks by the sheer brute force of the straight punch, the creature doesn't even twitch its creepy face. Snapping back into his fighting stance real quick, the kid notes with surprise that the giant trash bag didn't even feel the concentrated power hit. Sticking out its messed up tongue, the beast talks trash with a raspy voice, complaining about the kid constantly crashing his dinner plans. Hearing that gross voice hits the MC hard, and he totally freezes in shock, finding out that thing can actually talk. Right on cue, the underworld's giant ruler hops on the comms, pointing out that the vast majority of them don't say a single word. With a serious, calculating look, the deity figures this weird talent didn't just pop up out of nowhere for the cursed beast. This crazy level of brain power, that beast had to swallow an ungodly amount of innocent souls in the blind spots of the hellish mountain. Knowing about that unforgivable track record, the kid gets washed in a wave of fury, and the red karma explodes wildly around him. Completely done with the games and playing nice, he decides he's setting the pace this time and blasts off, breaking the sound barrier. The slashing strike crushes the terrain, kicking up a massive wave of dirt and rocks, but only hits pure ghost air. Flexing some insane agility for its size, the beast perfectly dodges the hit, landing in a clearer spot. Taking advantage of the tiny gap in defense, the beast stealthily pops up behind the Reaper and lets out a terrifying, ear-piercing roar. With a deathful swoop, the massive claw slices the wind, aiming to tear the hero's back apart in one shot. Masterfully dodging the move, the MC hops lightly onto the enemy's own arm, using the monster as a launch pad. Looking down from up high with pure sass, he just snaps his fingers, triggering a heavy command from his infernal spirit magic. Instantly, an invisible force brutally crushes the freak against the floor, sending rubble flying everywhere. Free and without a scratch after the defensive trick, the kid sticks the landing perfectly, ready to get back to the beatdown. But the beast is stubbornly holding on, and even while pinned to the rocks, its paws dig into the ground, trying to push back up and fight. Running purely on blind rage, the creature stretched out hand grabs the young guy's ankle tight, mumbling that it's going to eat the hostage no matter what. Far away in the comfy palace, the king's loyal guard stares wide-eyed, totally amazed by the crazy brawl going down on the mountain. Trapped by that gross iron grip, the kid curses, struggling to pull his leg back while the beast insists on snagging a bite. Feeling super disgusted by the crawling creature's pathetic obsession, the Vigilant wraps his free fist in karma flames. The killer glare in the kid's eyes hits its max, oozing pure fury as he curses out that stubborn piece of trash. Unloading all that bottled up pressure into one single move, he buries the magic punch, mercilessly destroying the monster's head. Totally melted by the cleansing fire, the creepy claw loses its grip strength and drops limp on the crushed ground. The fire keeps burning the evil spirit's headless remains, wrapping up the hunt and wiping out another hazard from the gloomy zone. The monster's gross hand twitches hard, trying to break loose. Watching it all from far away, the Yakshini guard screams in anger, wanting to know what the kid is doing. The weird beast throws its mouth wide open, warning him that level of power isn't going to do squat. Even while shoving the beast with everything he's got, the hero hears the demoness tell him to use the same power he dropped on the first target. Cracking an angry smile, the vigilante curses the frustrating situation. With his glowing fists pressed against the giant fangs, he grumbles that he'd already be doing it if he actually could. Feeling the heat, Lee Sung-yeol notices his flames are looking super weak and wonders what exactly changed since the last brawl. Just then, a giant claw slices through the air right at him. The Reaper quickly backs off, sliding across the stone floor to dodge the deadly hit. Using the momentum, he hits a backflip, getting even more space away from the creature. But the beast is way too fast, and the MC ends up taking a heavy slam right into the rocks. Right after, a devastating punch from the beast smashes the wall where the kid was standing just a second ago. The hit is so brutal it instantly makes the hero cough up a puddle of blood. Without even giving him a second to breathe, the freak opens its gross mouth, ready to swallow the hunter whole. Moments away from becoming a snack, the guy hears the beast's creepy voice telling him to just give up. Seeing this bizarre scene play out, the tied-up thugs go totally speechless from the shock. Over the comms, King Yomer calls his guard, who answers immediately. With totally urgent vibes, the boss commands that they absolutely cannot let those two targets meet up, no matter what. All banged up, the MC looks at his own fist and calls himself pathetic for losing. His mind drifts back to his revenge promises and how he was going to settle the score with those scumbags. Trapped in the ghoul's throat, the kid finds it funny that he ended up in such a miserable spot right off the bat. Beast lets out a mocking little laugh, confirming the guy's tragic end. Inside that gross darkness, a voice echoes, asking if he seriously thought he could pull it off. Shin Jiyoung's cynical face pops into his mind, making a total joke out of justice. Blinded by hatred, the Reaper winds up his arm while the spirit fire starts burning for real this time. The coward's arrogant smirk keeps haunting the kid's head. He mumbles to himself, perfectly understanding what's holding his power back. Glaring at the beast, the kid declares this disgusting freak isn't his real target. Planting his foot firmly on the ground, the Vigilant tells the ghost to hold up just a little bit longer. His fist gets totally swallowed by a brutal fire as he swears he's going to destroy the real culprit. Letting loose all that built-up fury, the strike punches straight through and dusts the giant creature's head in the blink of an eye. The young girl who got saved drops her jaw, watching that absolutely insane power explosion. The monster's body turns into ash while the hero stays standing right in the middle of the karma fire. With a pure psycho stare, Lee Sung-yeol swears he's going to make those crooks feel the exact same pain.